Hello and welcome to this episode of The Rest is Entertainment with me, Marina Hyde.
And me, Richard Osman. Hello, Marina.
Right then.
Here we go. Cast away.
Don your hazmat suits because we're going to go away to an island off the coast of Madagascar. Channel 5 have performed the dubious coup of signing Phillip Schofield latterly of this morning for their format Cast Away, which is when a celebrity has to go and live on an uninhabited island for 10 days.
Filming themselves.
There's
not even camera operators. It's literally just one person by themselves.
Now, it's being stripped across every Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday night of this current week. I have seen the first episode. I had to go through a huge number of loops to do that.
Really? What sort of loops do you have to
when
to watch
programmes
something?
come out, they have some. I noticed that the rules were completely different for people who wish to write news stories about it. But anyway, you have something called an embargo, which means you're not allowed to write about it or talk about it for review purposes until a certain time. In this case, apparently 2 hours after the episode has finished airing. So anyway, I have signed a number of documents and it aired on Monday night, episode 1.
So some people would have seen last night's episode, which is the one you're going to talk about. I have not, because, spoiler alert, we do not record this live on a Tuesday morning. We do this on a Monday morning, so I still have the pleasure of watching this show. But so you've signed lots of documents. I have not, but you're allowed to talk now.
I'm now allowed to talk about. I'm now allowed to, in tabloid parlance, break my silence.
Excellent, Marina Hyde ungagged
on this. Anyway. He says it took him 30 hours to get to Madagascar. I don't know which airports he passed through on the way, but had he cared to look out of the window in any of those, he might have had a realisation that what he was about to embark on was some real first world problem stuff. As we know, Phillip Schofield was let go, fired, resigned from, delete. There seemed to be a number of conflicting narratives from this morning. Because he had a relationship with a much, much younger member of very, very junior staff, which he consistently lied about. And the relationship with his co-host, Holly Willoughby, had broken down partly for that reason, but for other reasons as well, some of which can't be discussed. Anyhow, he asks quite early on, and the format of the show is we see him at home talking about the things that have befallen him, and we see him with his family, and we see him in a studio before he goes, and he says, will this be my opportunity for reflection? No, on the basis of what I've seen. I would call this a voyage to the limits of self-pity. It really, I think there was almost zero contrition at all in the episode I saw. He said, I screwed up, I made a mistake, but otherwise it's a sort of picnic of narcissism. He talks about, there's some funny sort of quotes that you have to laugh at. He says, I'm 4-1 to do the other jungle show. And he's asked, will you do it? By the way, you haven't been asked.
Is that an 8.5 hot mic?
That's it. Ain't how. That's I'm a celebrity,
yeah, okay.
Which he hasn't been asked.
I just thought, do you know what? I felt I had to say something there because all I'm doing is I'm going to sit back like everybody currently walking their dogs. We just want to hear. We want to hear your views on this program.
As the person, I feel like I'm doing a bit of an Anthony Scaramucci here, apologising, but then saying, "Listen, but I've got to just tell you this because I've seen it." Anyway, so he says, "I'm a celebrity." Well, my best friends host it. But there are just some channels you won't work for, some people you won't work for.
Okay.
I'm sure Kevin Ligo over at ITV, director of programmes, is crying into his coffee about that one.
I can't imagine Kevin Ligo at ITV ever crying.
Yeah.
He's like a sort of a Terminator for people.
I think his tears won't liquefy if he watches this episode. Let's put it that way. He talks a lot about Schofield talks a lot about three shits who have done him over. I assume they're at ITV. I don't know who they are, but you can assume they're executives. I suspect that one is Holly, who, by the way, has gone through some horrific stuff really in the last year. I mean, genuinely, that legal case of the person who was plotting to rape and kill her. I mean, the most horrible thing. Anyhow, you see the stuff with Schofield and his wife and daughters at the start. They're having a sort of family barbecue, and he sort of hammily deadpans to them all. "Are you okay?" Which is something that Holly said when she came back to this morning after he had departed. So I think that was a sort of little drive-by on her. There's a significant loathing of the media, of medium via which he, of course, had a great 40-year career. He says,
I think for balance, if I was Schofield, I would have a significant loathing of the media as well at the moment. But
he says, "Let me get on with the quiet life you've all given me. You're on a reality TV show on Channel 5, but okay. What don't you miss about TV? You learn a lot about people. You really learn a lot, and I don't miss that."
wow.
There is a sense when you're watching this that he doesn't remotely understand what has happened. He says, "I will not be defeated by it." And there's a bit when he's eating a mango, which I really thought could serve as a review of the entire episode. He says, "The bitterness sucks the inside of your cheeks in." Well, yes.
And that's show business.
Yeah, and yes, and his attempts at fishing, he says, "This must be so embarrassing to watch." Well, yes, I did find it. I can see why Channel 5 you can see why Channel 5 done this.
Yeah, I get it. And it's it seems, no harm, no foul. It's literally just him on an island. You're going to get huge publicity. We're talking about it. Other people are going to watch it for sure. It's going to do very big business for Channel 5. It's tricky, and again, there's been no court case, so it's not a Hugh Edwards situation. There's nothing stopping anybody putting Phillip Schofield on the television. It's just a matter of time before he came on TV.
He's still pushing that line, by the way, unwise but not illegal,
which
is Crisis PR gave to him. And I have to say, oh my God, the Crisis PR needed a Crisis PR. That was not, I think he's dropped the illegal, so he now says it was unwise.
Unwise yet illegal. Yeah. You know what? Unwise and illegal. Yeah. You know what? I should not have set fire to that warehouse. When I think about it, it was unwise. Also against the law. Now I think about it. So yeah, I absolutely understand why they did it. Would I have done it? Probably not. Maybe leave it another 6 months or something. If I was Phillip Schofield, would I have done it? Absolutely.
Oh, because, you can see why I did it. They've got no right. No one's got a right of reply.
Yeah.
He controls the narrative, absolutely. Yeah. He films himself.
He hasn't got a Mole Rajan interviewing him.
No, absolutely not.
Which is a lovely place to be for anybody at any given time. Honestly, any day you go where a Mole Rajan is not interviewing you, you just think, do you know what, I will tuck that day in my back pocket and keep it with me. So, yeah, I get it. And also, Phillip Schofield's view of Phillip Schofield and his family's view of Phillip Schofield is obviously very, very different to most other people. So, he's coming from a completely different angle, which is he wants his stuff out there. So it's sort of perfect for all sides, I would say. But what you really want, of course, is to be on this show and for everybody to go, actually, you are forgiven. And actually, we do now understand your side of the story. We do understand your perspective. Welcome back into the fold. But you don't think that's what's happening here.
Well, we'll come to whether he can parlay this into a return to television in a bit. But what I would say is, I'll be really interested to see what you think when you watch it, because for me, I found it such a sort of mannered portrait of a man who knows how television works.
Yes.
So there's a bit at the start where he sort of gives himself, he gives himself a potential arc. He says, "I want to see if the ultimate isolation can finally set me free."
That's clever.
He says, there's a bit at the start where they have an interview with him back, before he's got to the island. He says, "I'm going to say this now, and then we'll cut to. And then he says, "I'm really good at fire." And then they duly do cut to him not actually being able to get the fire going. And there's a load of mugging at the camera like he's doing one of those silly demos on This Morning.
Yeah.
And I just felt incredibly managed throughout it all. Like, yeah, I can see what you're trying to do. You've also said to us what you're trying to do. And I found it, just for that reason, a sort of double layer of cynicism, because you're sort of being shown how he's going to manipulate you into saying, "I've actually done nothing wrong." As I say, ITV didn't have a right of reply. And there are certain things that, I
would watch a show where they put Kevin Lygo now on a desert island for a week. Genuinely, I'd watch that. For people, we talk about Kevin sometimes, and obviously people don't know who he is.
We always need to talk about
But
Kevin.
We do. He is an incredible character, and if you put Kevin Lygo on an island for a week, he's indiscreet enough if you ever have lunch with him. If you left him on a desert island by himself for a week and then just handed him prompt cards like Schofield, Anton Deck, daytime TV, I would honestly, that's a ratings winner.
It would be truly epic, but I have to say it's less so with Schofield. He's also the sort of sense of self-importance is titanic. He says the three shits, they've taken pretty much everything: reputation, dignity, legacy. I mean, Your legacy is whatever inherited audience you leave over for Loose Women when you wind up at the end of the programme, right? That's your legacy, okay? The self-importance is extraordinary. And it does slightly remind you of the personality we were dealing with him, which, spoiler, in my view, had some part in his downfall. There's a little thing of a like tarantula running away from him. Everyone's a critic. But that sort of, maybe he thinks he's being winsome, but honestly, I kept watching it thinking there will be palm trees on this island on the phone to their agent saying, get me off this job. I do not want to work with this guy. I've had enough. And in a way, that's what I'm not saying you meet them all on the way on the back down, but there wasn't that much support for Phillip Schofield because a lot of people, not all people, but a lot of people found him very difficult to work with. And here he doesn't really have to work with anyone, which is perhaps in some ways his heaven. He does seem to be enjoying it hugely.
It's often the case when people do something that is unwise but not illegal. If people do illegal things, by and large, that's it for them in television, and rightly so. If you do something that is on that razor's edge, where you kind of where there is a group of people could, without full knowledge of the facts, go, oh, it seems fair enough what he did. I kind of get it. In those situations, tax avoidance, things like that. The way that you have treated people over the years becomes very, very important. The relationships that you've grown and the way that you've dealt with people actually means you can be protected and looked after, and there is an easier route back. And you're right, and I don't know his relationship particularly with people at ITV, but he didn't seem to have very many defenders. He didn't seem to have many people who would go out to bat for him. And I often think it's interesting when agents dump clients as well when they haven't done anything illegal. Like if you're Hugh Edwards' agent, of course you dump your client. There's no way around it. But if your agents are dumping you as well, then that's interesting. His agents were
YMU.
His agents were YMU. And it's interesting that when agents dump people, because I think he's having a go at them as well. And so if you've done something unwise but not unfair, then the only reason if you're YMU that you would dump that client is you had absolutely no previous knowledge of how they might behave in any way whatsoever, and this has all come as a shock to you, which of course is not true. So if you're YMU, I think reputationally it's difficult for them to reconcile what they've done with what they'd known about him previously. So I understand why there's some beef there. I kind of get that. You can't support someone, and then the second publicly things come out, you don't support somebody. So that's a tricky one.
His daughter became who used to work for YMU, left YMU to become his publicist. But actually, YMU did go in with his daughter many months later to ITV, saying, "Is there a blacklist at ITV? Is Philip on it? Why is he not getting to complain about?" Well, I don't know if you remember something from 10 minutes ago, but this is why he's not currently working at ITV. But they did go in, and so there must be, I don't know whether there's some sort of residual relationship there. I don't quite understand why someone who dumped him then went in and said, you've treated him very badly.
My absolute favourite bit, by the way, of that thing we did, the Royal Television Society conference a couple of weeks ago, was Amol Rajan interviewing Tim Davie at the BBC and saying, will Hugh Edwards ever work for the BBC again? And Tim Davie going, no, and Amol Rajan going, why?
It's like, have you opened the newspapers this morning? Yeah, do you have access to the internet?
Take a guess. And that's so I'm not sure what the YMU Schofield relationship is, but I'd be interested to find out.
Yes, I'd consider that a developing story. But one of the things Phillip Schofield says in this is that it was to do with homophobia. And that he would have been treated differently if it had not been a young man. Maybe there was some of that in the coverage, and but he said, if it had been a young woman, if that had been the case with me, and it had been a woman, pat on the back, well done, mate. Well, I think that if you're in an almost 40-year age gap relationship, you're the most senior person on that show, and this person is the most junior person on that show. You first met them when they were 15. You say nothing happened till they were 20. And that person, say it was a woman, and that woman had lost her dream job and was now jobbing around the pub trade and really have had her entire adult life having to be discussing this thing, then no, you would not have been getting a pat on the back for me. And I just think that's complete nonsense. And it might be a nice story he likes to tell himself when there's nobody to challenge him over his little beach bonfire. But that's a ridiculous point of view.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, maybe in the 1980s, before any of us were in the workplace, but that you would absolutely it would be held over you for the rest of your career if you did do that, if you had that reputation. I mean, listen, talk to Jermaine Genius if you want to know whether it's pure homophobia or whether actually inappropriate relations in the workplace with colleagues are. I know Jermaine Genius is in a relationship, blah, blah, blah. So there's all sorts of, as always with these things, they're always complicated. But the basic truth of it is what he did was inappropriate. And I've never worked in a workplace, I've never worked in a television production where it would have been acceptable, or whether, even if there was nothing you could do about it, whether people would have patted him on the back.
Yeah.
And anybody, by the way, in his life who would have patted him on the back are people that you would want to drum out of the business. Anyway.
I agree. And I think saying, in the gay world, this is totally normal is a form of homophobia in itself. So I think we don't need to have him on his high horse. What I was really struck by when you watch this is that sort of sense of indispensability. Now, this morning's ratings have continued much as they were. They are on a downward trend, like all, the general terrestrial gloom. But they've sort of tracked the general trend. Yeah. He's a sort of, he's Coriolanus. Like when they banish Coriolanus and they say Rome sits safe and still without him. Well, same with daytime Coriolanus, Yeah. It's all fine. One thing I would love to talk about with you, because I do think it's fun, the island format. The islands have become... It's really interesting. Islands and reality TV, when they first started doing reality TV, lots of shows quickly became on islands. And I sort of love what islands, they wanted something, or even subconsciously they wanted something, this is reflexively part of the choice, where kind of like normal rules don't apply. Yeah. The culture has done all this work, heavy lifting for ever since Robinson Crusoe. You just think, okay, people are just having to do things that they wouldn't normally do to survive. Normal rules don't apply. It might turn really nasty, but that's only to be expected. We're on an island. All of those kind of things. So I find the island format, it's a place where you're going to either, fuck, fight, or find yourself. And I find that a sort of hilarious.
Although if you're by yourself, like Phillip Schofield, you can't. There's a couple of those you can't do.
I think he could have a fight there. I'd really back him for that.
It's funny enough. It's exactly like crime fiction in a funny kind of way. Modern crime fiction, which is you need somewhere where people cannot escape from and don't have mobile coverage. And if you've got that, suddenly you've got yourself a plot. Islands have always been the thing, and this weirdly harks back to one of the very first. So Castaway. Years and years ago, late 80s, Joanna Lumley was abandoned on a desert island, and that's where Survivor came from. Charlie Parsons said to me, "Oh, Joanna Lumley's been on this island. Can we do something on an island?" And I said, "Why don't you send a load of different people over there and you vote one out each week?" I mean, that's voting out, and that's all that kind of stuff, and that's Survivor. But islands, are a real trope, and it is just that thing of you can't go anywhere. I mean, even in the jungle, there's doctors around, the crew are nearby. On an island, you're sort of, there's just something about it which means the fripperies of television. There's not a green room.
Do you remember on 30 Rock they had a fake pitch for one called MILF Island, which was going to be like 25 super hot moms, 58th grade boys, no rules, and they do endure.
But it's weirdly that the history of that is Brexit as well, which is just say, no, honestly, we're an island. Yeah. Okay, our rules, our gaff, our rules. So it's a big reality show, but where you can't escape to Calais. Why
can't all the semi-cancelled men be put on an island, and the prize is that they can return to their career exactly as they left it? And it's everyone. It's like Schofield, Scott Rubin, if they haven't gone to prison. Yeah. They all, I mean...
Redemption Island?
Yeah. Well, I think it would be Murder Island, because they would tread over each other's warm corpses to get back to exactly how it was before they were cancelled.
But it would be a whole series of men sort of saying, no, but I really reflected. And just it would be like a reflect-off. Who was reflected the most?
I wonder if it would. I think
Reflection Island.
Well, Schofield's not reflecting. It would be
but he is reflecting, isn't he? He's
deflecting. Yeah, I would call it like Edgelord of the Flies, and they would all have to, and they would all end up killing each other. But how long do you think? Okay, let's get to this final question then. If he's not how long do you think a wildernessing should last. For me, this is about 15 minutes after he departed. We've seen that lots of these people are being released back into the wild slowly. People like the producer Scott Rudin in the States, who people think is Scott Rudin's back. He's coming back through theatre, okay?
Really?
All of these, it's like a beautiful story. They're being released from captivity, of the prison of their own making.
Louis C.K. came back very quickly.
He got a Grammy. Aziz Ansari, lots of these people are sort of coming back into the wild. But how long should a wildernessing last? In politics, it's about 5 minutes nowadays.
See, here's the interesting thing, isn't it? Because for us, it doesn't feel like Phillip Schofield's wildernessing has lasted very long, because we don't think about Phillip Schofield very often.
No.
So since, he was
He's
wilderness...
not been indispensable to the culture.
Exactly. We've thought about him 14 times. Whereas Phillip Schofield is Phillip Schofield all day, every day. Phillip Schofield's family are his family all day, every day. So it's very, very present to them, the wildernessing. And so 18 months to him, he's lived every single minute of every single day. So he would obviously be fast forwarding the de-wildernessing. We call it de-wildernessing, right?
Yeah,
that's the word.
We do now.
Yeah. Whereas for us, we're just thinking, oh no, I need to have thought of you maybe 40 times before you're allowed back. And in your terms,
that seems like a good amount.
That would be 4 years or something like that. So people will always try and come back out of the wilderness quicker than we would like them to.
What will he get out of this? A travelogue?
I mean, that's the question: is what does he get out of this? So where does he want to get back to? What is it that he wants to do? And I'm aware in this show that he said this might be the last thing I ever do. I just wanted my right to reply. But of course, he's a TV presenter. That's been his job his whole life. And as you rightly point out, the way he deals with this, a TV producer, a TV brain, that's where he's comfortable. That's where he's happy. And he's done it very, very well a number of times in lots of different places. So if you are Phillip Schofield, then of course you want to come back onto television. There's no, that's absolutely fine. And of course, by the way, you've done this program, of course you're going to do all of these things. If he feels he has not done anything wrong, if he feels he's been overpunished, and he feels like the job that he used to do, which he was good at, is something that he's not allowed to do, of course his job is to step by step come back to where he was. But in terms of an industry, it's hard to work out where the next step is for him. So this is sort of an ideal first step for everybody. I guess it makes me feel uncomfortable. Clearly makes you feel uncomfortable. I think it will make lots of people listening.
It makes me feel disdainful.
Yes, which is even
He's not made me feel uncomfortable. He has made me feel disdainful.
Oh, I like that. And that makes you feel comfortable. Because you like to
It's
feel
my happy
disdainful.
place.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, disdain. So the question is, where do you go next? Now, do you go on I'm a Celebrity? We're going to talk a little bit about...
Yeah, he's not going to get booked by ITV. Can I
Yes.
just put that out here? He's not going to get booked by ITV.
But then you always get to the stage where channels become desperate, or a format starts losing some of its luster or some of its viewers.
He's not Tom Cruise, though. He's not box office. I just fundamentally... There's a lot about this that's disproportionate. The way that people talk about This Morning, who hosts it, no offence, it's a great show for the time of day. But we talk about this more than like British foreign policy.
Yes,
and it's like
good.
a show with... Well, no, I actually think that's quite important.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I don't want to do a podcast about it, but I do. But I would say that we talk about this show that has, under 1 million viewers, significantly under 1 million viewers, in a sort of feverish way that is disproportionate to its surely actual influence within the culture. This is why he thinks that he is an indispensable, broadcaster who can talk about something like legacy.
It's like when Piers Morgan left GMB and he was saying, well, good luck without me. And of course, the ratings are identical. Occasionally he'll quote that they've gone down, but they went down from the one episode where he walked out, which weirdly got more viewers, and so he takes that as his benchmark. And actually, listen, if he's listening, he knows the truth of this. It's exactly the same as it was, if not slightly more. And they've got loads of great new hosts on that show. They run it in a very interesting way. So Morgan was able to do that, and it's not just that thing of saying I want a legacy. Morgan was then able to parlay that into like a £50 million deal with News International, which is insane. I mean, it's absolutely
He's saying
crazy.
Rupert Murdoch's losing his marbles.
But I mean,
I'm saying the deal is no longer extant. I think
doesn't matter. he's had it.
He's had the money.
Yeah, he doesn't need more money than that, and also, but for nothing.
Yeah,
they literally got nothing. The channel they put him on is gone, but anybody who works for a News International, any like Murdoch, anyone like that, if you are thinking of spending £50 million on somebody, talk to just any television producer, anyone, any single person, say, what do you think we're getting for this money? What is it that he brought to your program? What extra return on investment did you get on GMB for him being there? And they will, every single one will tell you, zero. Which is not to say he wasn't a good presenter on that, because he was. Not to say it wasn't an entertaining watch, because it was. But he brought no extra money into that
They
program.
didn't have any experience of television. This is the thing. But I have to say that news organisations have been run like that all the time. You have journalists from editorial running business things, which is a huge mistake. And in that case, you had someone who knows nothing about television thinking, oh, I understand television. I understand virality and how to, in this modern... Well, I mean, as has been proved, you don't.
Yes, you really don't. And so the question is, where does Schofield go next? What can he do? And we live now in a world and a culture where actually those gatekeepers are much, much, much less important. The Russell Brands of this world can go on their own platforms and produce their own content and find their own audience. Schofield, I think, is of a generation where that is alien to him. He's absolutely a beast of television and a beast of terrestrial television. So his instinct is always, how do I make my comeback? I make my comeback by going on Channel 5, rather than I make my comeback like Russell Brand by starting to baptize people in a river. So, in a way, that's it's Schofield's way of coming back is just the way he understands, which is, I'm going to go on television, which people can click on their remote control and they can find me. But actually the way of coming back now is very different. But Ellen DeGeneres has done the same thing. She's done a big new stand-up special in America after all the kind of bullying allegations. And, she said, they accuse me of this, they accuse me of that. Well, I'm a strong woman. And you think, oh, I don't know.
Again, that's been widely received as a sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
And people don't like that.
Yeah.
She had a chance if she had actually really just gone completely raw and pulled herself apart for it, as does Phillip Schofield, because he's on his own and he can do what he likes.
Yeah.
But both of them have stopped, not even in the same postcode of the brink of that. They are miles away from that level of self-reflection. And both of those to me would have been highly watchable television events. And the fact that they've both done a sorry, not sorry is, in fact, I mean, if they can even be called that, to me, leaves them feeling like, okay, I think this is the end.
Yeah, I feel like we have not seen last of either Ellen DeGeneres or Phillip Schofield or, unfortunately, Russell Brand. I think they're going to be part of our culture for some time to come. Well, as I've told you,
Brand, we definitely haven't seen the last of. But yes, they'll never be what they were again. That couldn't be more clear. But we'll have to see in what way they manage to inveigle their way back into sections of the public affection.
Would you, just to people listening, would you recommend they watch the Schofield thing or leave it unwatched?
I think it's totally up to you. It will give them ratings and then he'll take something from that. But I think it's quite interesting for the reasons I've said, a sort of television native trying to tell you, telling you what he's doing and then doing it and trying to redeem himself in a really sort of very obvious and, in my view, quite sort of, you couldn't call it gossamer touched way. And I think it would be it's quite interesting to watch from that point of view. But yes, as an exercise in not giving people rights to reply, not giving, not telling the whole story, again, it's interesting. All of these things are interesting. They're in the culture. I watch them all. I don't have sort of things that I refuse to watch, really. This episode is brought to you by Sky, proud partners of The Rest is Entertainment, where you can watch unmissable shows, including The Penguin, starring Academy Award nominee Colin Farrell.
I know. Now, Colin Farrell was the Penguin in the Batman movie, and genuinely you wouldn't have a clue it was him.
It really shows the magical power of makeup and prosthetics.
Incredible performance. Now, in this story, Gotham City is in ruin, in total chaos. The Penguin, aka Oscob, is out to fill the power vacuum in the city and take control of its criminal underworld. Come on, man.
Not only does it star Colin Farrell, there is a return for Kristen Milioti.
Oh, I like her.
Yeah, she plays Sophia Falcone, the daughter of the Penguin's former boss. You might have seen Kristen in The Wolf of Wall Street.
Brilliant cast.
And great world building. Tense, violent, dark, always darker and grittier. The show looks like everything we got on The Batman, and then it kicks it up a notch.
Now, in this 8-part series, it goes deeper into the dark depths of Gotham's criminal underworld, and we'll get to see how it all plays out.
The Penguin, on Sky from the 20th of September.
There was recently a Bridgerton immersive experience which didn't go quite as well as it might have done.
Yes, the cultural mania for immersive experiences, which we're also going to discuss. The Bridgerton one, I've got to say right off the bat, because a lot of people won't have got that far down the news reports, it was not an official Netflix or Shondaland experience. By the way, there are a load of Bridgerton experiences, which we'll come to in a minute.
And these immersive experiences where you turn up somewhere and so you're in the middle of a ball and there's wonderful kind of
it can be all sorts of things. You can do Monopoly Live. You can do, there's a sort of dopamine one in London. There are so many of these things, which we'll talk about in a bit. But the Bridgerton one, this was an off-brand one, I'm going to stress that, in Detroit. People spent hundreds of dollars on their outfits. They look great in the pictures. They were invited to step into the enchanting world of the Regency era with sophistication, grace, and historical charm. Now, what they actually stepped into was a world of one violin, I think sort of strip lighting, no chairs. There was, for some reason, that's a stripper's pole with an exotic dancer in the centre of this. Again, not necessarily typically Regency, but I don't want to comment on too much. I'll leave that to the rest of history. And they had soggy noodles and chicken wings.
Wow.
And all the organisers have said, as I say, not Netflix or Shondaland, have said is that there were organisational challenges, which is like, I've seen the pictures. And so it's been one of those things, a bit like the Wonka one or whatever. But there are many, many Bridgerton experiences. They've had the Queen's Ball, which is in cities across the world, and you pay a lot of money and you go and there's somebody who's as Queen Charlotte and she chooses the diamond of the ball and all of this stuff.
And that's the real deal.
Yeah. There's Bridgerton by candlelight, which is concerts of all the sort of orchestral concerts.
Oh, that sounds nice.
I know. And
is there a stripper's pole there?
Yeah. There's a thing that says you will smell flowers and you will not be imagining things. By the way, what you are in fact smelling is a synthetic wisteria scent that is being pumped through the venue.
Honestly, for me, I prefer that. Because you don't have to go outside.
Well, I'm going to come to immersive experiences in a bit because there are so many. The ones in London at the moment, I mean, this, Van Gogh Live, the sort of ways of looking at art. Is it art? We'll come along to that. There's been a Dali one.
Finally, is it art?
Dopamine Land, the Fawlty Towers dining experience, Alcatraz prison cocktail bar theatrical experience.
No.
Fundamentally different understanding of the rock than I'd ever, and anyway, whatever. Now, tell me about the Taskmaster one, because the signs have gone up for the Taskmaster experience.
I've been talking to, as a Taskmaster alumnus, I've been talking to them all about it. So it is interesting because, some of those things, when they get advertised, you just think, could this be awful? I went to one of those immersive plays years ago, which everyone loved, and it might have been the worst evening of my life.
Punch Drunk are the most famous immersive theatre company, and they've done lots of these immersive experiences.
You have to wear masks and walk between different rooms and stuff like that. I was just honestly put on a play.
You would absolutely hate those.
There were no Maltesers. Yeah. Nothing. But this world where you go along, like the Crystal Maze experience, which Ingrid's also done with the family and loved it. So, when people put a bit of money and love behind these things and when the show is involved, they can be great. So Taskmaster experience. Now, everything Taskmaster does tends to be good. And it tends to be good because Alex Horn as the talent loves that show and puts his all into things, and the production team behind it, Andy Devonshire and his team, also love it. It's one of those shows where they live it, and Andy Devonshire's been making this for 10 years, like, non-stop, and adores it. And talking to everybody behind it, it sounds like it's going to be amazing. So it is sort of an immersive theatre experience. I think it's got 72 members of cast on this thing, and you turn up with your friends and you genuinely play Taskmaster, and all the tasks have been created by Alex, and they are, the one thing about it is you're not judged. They're all things where there is actually somebody wins by getting more or doing more or something like that. So it sounds like a genuinely great experience, but also the love and care behind the scenes. It sounds like over the years they got so many props from that show, and the Taskmaster house itself, which is very, very tiny, which they constantly trying to pretend isn't where it is, and someone keeps putting it on Google Maps where it is. But it is iconic. It is iconic. But even the house itself is too small even to film the show, really, and would certainly be too small to do this immersive experience. So they've recreated lots of the environments within that. They've got loads of paintings from people who've been on the show. The cocktails are all themed around awful cocktails people have had to make on the show, over the years and stuff like that. It just, the production design is going to look like Taskmaster. It will be filled with things from Taskmaster. The events and, all the challenges that you do with your friends have been created by the team behind Taskmaster, that makes all the difference. If someone's just said,
licensed the idea and said, you get on with it.
Exactly
then and lots of the board games of popular shows are bad for this reason.
Oh my God, some of the board games of shows I've done.
Okay.
Like the Pointless board game. I mean, absolutely inexplicable. I always say if anyone has a go at me, I have nothing to do with me. But I say just use the cards and ask your own questions. Come up with your own format. That'll do you.
I really liked it at our house when you did use the cards and ask my children all the questions.
See,
they were in true heaven. He did the entire show and they were on it.
That's an immersive experience.
Yeah, that was so immersive.
Yeah,
so not scalable, really.
Not really scalable. You know what I was thinking about that? How do you do a House of Games experience? So it's run by one of these immersive production companies, but Andy, the producer, and Alex, he just said, look, we all can't help but to get involved, and we all can't help but
but that's because they care.
Because they care. They love it, and also they love the legacy of that show, and so they are constantly suggesting things and constantly, outside of their work hours and, what they're being paid for, constantly, suggesting things and recommending things and improving things. And so it's launching this week, or the press...
I am actually going to go.
It's this week. I think it's going to be great. I think it is. I mean, listen, look for the reviews and stuff like that. But I tell you what, it isn't, and it is not the Detroit Bridgerton run by some scammers. I suspect there won't be a stripper pole there. I guess, although you never know.
No.
With that show, so yeah, I think it's going to be the sort of thing that if you are a fan of that show, that you will love, and it's loads of it is already sold out. It might be one of those things that is enormously profitable, I think, which takes us to another point, really, which is if you are Bridgerton or you are Taskmaster, this world we talk about a lot where it's much harder to make money out of television than it used to be. If you do have a brand, then this is the way that you make money out of it.
They think it's going to be worth over 8 trillion, the experience economy, as they call it, by 2028.
Not just the Taskmaster one.
Not just the Taskmaster, which would be nice, by 2028. And it's exploded since the pandemic. And there's lots of interesting reasons for that, I think.
It's true, but even something like ABBA Voyage, that's an immersive experience, really. It's not the band playing, it's something that's been created by producers in a venue which you can just go to forever. And Taskmaster is at Canada Water, I think. And the economics of it are, as I say, there's 72 members of staff on this thing, and lots of stuff has to be done. But the economics are such that if it is a hit, it's a hit like we were talking about recently, is a hit like a West End show is a hit.
Yeah.
And if it runs and runs and runs, it's making the money of a West End show, which is a huge amount of money. And given there is not a huge amount of money left in television, if you have one of these legacy brands, which Taskmaster is, then it's the way to go. And if you do it properly and it runs and runs and runs, then that's the way to do these things. And that's the way you can start monetizing your brands, because the world of television, you're not able, Traitors, quite hard to monetize the format of Traitors, but a Traitors immersive experience, which you would imagine would be...
You can definitely see,
coming, down the tracks, then, that would be a way of making a huge amount of money out of that format.
People thought in the pandemic, maybe the communal experience is dead. And as it turns out, it wasn't. But it's come back in this. This has particularly taken off since the pandemic. And I have to say that there's various reasons that kind of make it possible. First of all, the technology has become so good. Yeah. And technology in general is improving or changing lots of these experiences. But also, I think the audience has changed. Bear in mind that the sort of audience who will go out to these things, including Taskmaster things now, are the audience that grew up with hands-on museums, which we forget now, but that was a total innovation, that museums were places you went and you didn't touch. And now museums are a place where everything's interactive, and everyone changed, and there was a lot of sort of angsting about that at the time. Yeah. But they've grown up. And also think of the movies they watch. I mean, for better or for worse, the predominant cultural product has been Marvel movies, which, as Martin Scorsese said, are more like a thrill ride. Amusement parks are immersive experiences. These are a different form of amusement parks, in my view. I sometimes do think about the impresarios of these places. There's a few that I've been to that are like, I've got a warehouse and I want to fill it with something. So to me, it's sort of like landlords meet social media. Yes. Is it my favourite cocktail? I'm not sure it is, but and so you go and see something like the Dali experience. I've slightly felt like I see someone's got a warehouse they'd like to make some money out of.
Really?
Yes. So many of these things, like these art experiences, Van Gogh or whatever, which is like so many millions of people around the
And is
world
that
have
stuff
seen
where you walk in, you sort of inside the paintings
Yes,
and
you
stuff? So I
are,
haven't been to one.
But rather like all these things, you don't walk in at the start of the film. So you're sort of like, you walk in and then you think, I better wait and see the first half that I didn't see. And you're in it. But to me, that isn't, the Van Gogh show that is at the National Gallery, that's actually a Van Gogh picture. You're having some different form of experience if you're standing in a sort of 360 kind of virtual world of it, and saying you can appreciate every brushstroke, but it's not really meant to be appreciated in those particular ways. But I do think slightly that the tech firms and the internet are making museums like them. They're making theatre like them. They are all of these things. When you go to even a restaurant now and someone's put a sort of love seat outside it and lots of silk flowers, it's because they want you to put it on Instagram. And I slightly feel like people used to say about the Lighthouse family that it was soul music for people who don't like soul music. And I slightly feel this is art for people who don't like art.
That sounds perfect for me.
Yeah, well, exactly. But also, there's a sort of sense of escape, isn't there? But in a risk-averse world. Like, if you really wanted to take a risk and do something new and exciting and immersive, get on a plane and go somewhere. But in fact, what people want is to go to the Caledonian Road and be sort of locked into a room where they must solve a number of clues and be out in an hour. And it's a sort of managed form of chaos, isn't it? And managed form.
As consumers, certainly us growing up, we are passive. So it's absolutely it's passivity. You go to the cinema, you're not on your phone, you just watch the thing. You sit at home, you're watching television. It is scheduled, so you can go to the loo during the ad breaks, but that's about as interactive as it's going to get. So we absolutely consume these things passively. And this generation do not consume anything passively, or if they do, that's a deliberate choice, and it is an experience in and of itself. They go, oh no, it's an amazing thing where you go along, you have to sit still and you have to be quiet for 2 hours, and that's the experience. So they're very, very used to watching things actively and to interacting. And so all of these experiences are places you can go along, but you don't just look at a painting. You can walk around. You can choose your own route through. You can be inside something. You're experiencing something rather than looking at something.
But you've got a VR headset on. I feel like you're always mediated by their machines. It's a place where you can be alone together.
You are always mediated by their machines.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
You're mediated by their machines, and you can be alone together. I'm not convinced but also it must say something about the kind of crapsack world that people are constantly wishing to escape from it, and reality is something from which you wish to sort of immerse yourself away from.
See, I have some sympathy with that. Because of course, an imagined reality, you can do anything. Which of course that's going to be better than actual reality.
Well, I know. I went to Thorpe Park recently, and the Angry Birds interactive cinema has been repurposed as without irony, apparently, as the Ready Player One thing. And it's like, Ready Player One is specifically about, like, the world has gone to shit, no one bothers solving it any longer, and people just retreat into a place called the Oasis, which is sort of like Mark Zuckerberg's vision for the metaverse. And, again, all mediated via their machines, and you can be what you like, but you're alone together. And I slightly felt like, wow, I can't believe the Angry Birds land has become this, without irony. Like, you get that this is about really, really dystopian, don't you? But it's the ride.
But also, I think that culture is very, has lots of ways of enduring. And it's interesting, being over in the States, it's exactly the same as in the UK. Bookstores are thriving. Right, so bookstores are huge in a way that 10, 15 years ago you wouldn't have thought possible, because with a book, that is passive. You have to sit down and read it. And by the way, ebooks haven't taken off in the way they thought they might, but having an actual book in your hand is a huge cultural phenomenon with younger people. The audiences at all the book events were much, much younger than you would think. And however we sort of drive that part of our culture, the immersive thing and the interactive thing, and I'm all for it, because the better technology you can throw at it, the more interesting, exciting that is. Everyone is still seeking out passive experiences, and still seeking out experiences where you need some concentration, and still seeking out experiences that are long form. And in the way that podcasts have become enormous in the last 10 years, bookstores and physical books have grown and grown and grown in the last 10 years. I think it's interesting that the faster our culture gets, the more the slow culture industries are making money, and the more they're thriving, because we like to have a bit of both. I think it's just the fast culture industries are becoming better at what they do, and the slow culture industries do what they've always done, which is let's listen to some people talk, let's read a book that's from someone's imagination, takes me to another world. That stuff is always there, and that stuff doesn't seem to be disappearing, and that's the only thing that would worry me if we all spent all our lives in VR headsets, but we don't actually, is the truth. People who like that do that.
But he wants you to. He wants you.
Yeah,
he
of
thinks,
course.
yes, he wants you to.
But the head of Coca-Cola wants you to drink Coca-Cola. That's okay. I want you to read my books.
Well,
all of that's, that's all of that's okay. We all want to, people's money and give them an experience. In
yes, but
return.
I think, but the difference with these tech titans is that they're far more powerful than the head of Coca-Cola ever was.
Are you talking about Alex Horn again?
Yeah, I'm talking about Alex Horn. Yeah, I'm talking about tech titan Alex Horn. I would love if Alex Horn was a tech titan, I'd be quite relaxed about it all. If I'm perfectly
yeah, but
honest
maybe
with
he'd
you.
turn into a nightmare. Maybe it's the very act of becoming a tech titan that makes you a nightmare. Maybe it works that way around. Maybe Mark Zuckerberg was like Alex Horn years ago.
He was never like Alex Horn. What? No, he was never like Alex Horn. If he was, then I would feel so much more relaxed about our future beneath his machines.
So, Teddy, can I just say this is just a, inside baseball thing. The thing I found hardest about Taskmaster,
yes,
because I love Alex, he's amazing, but you would turn up to do your task and Alex was in character. And so you couldn't you say, hi, Alex, and you go, hello, Richard. I go, oh, no, that's normally if I say hi, Alex, you say hi and talk about your day. And you go, hi, Richard, open the task. And so I found that very, that to me was like going to one of those experiences and feeling.
The Daniel Day-Lewis of those experiences just will not break character for the shoot.
Yeah, he refused to break character. It infuriated me because where was my human contact?
Where's his BAFTA?
They must have won a BAFTA, haven't they?
Well, I want him personally to win a BAFTA for Best Actor.
I mean, he should do. But yeah, I think that this experience is going to be great.
Yeah.
So when you talk about, so I don't want to misinterpret your point. When you talk about tech titans being in charge of us, you are saying that these immersive experiences come from technology and wanting as much of our attention as possible and wanting to manipulate us as much as possible.
I think that the way that, yes, I think that sense of sort of, they talk about being communal all the time, but actually what is occurring is a very atomized experience.
Yeah.
And that's what I say about being alone together. When Mark Zuckerberg talks about, he says, this is about the future of human connection. And he had a conference last week where he was speaking to a AI bot of a guy who was standing next to him on stage. And I just thought, yeah, this is a tableau here, right here.
Yeah.
You talking to an AI version of the person who's right there and telling me that this is the future of human communication. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, I'm not going to lay out roses for it.
But is this not just like the early days of steam trains? And they're just trying to work out how steam trains work.
No, these people are far more powerful than any of the people who ran Standard Oil, all of the biggest monopolies. They are far more powerful than those people ever were. And those people, by the way, ended up broken up. So this is a form of monopoly power which we haven't seen before. It's unmatched in history. And no, I think it's much more dangerous. Sorry, I know this is not on an
I genuinely love that we are talking simultaneously about Taskmaster Live and the
Standard Oil, the breakup of Standard Oil,
the dystopian future of technology and the collapse of the world.
Well, you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah,
right.
It's always a bit of both with us.
On that note, can we talk about Strictly?
Yes. Often, people sometimes say, "Oh, reality shows it's for people it's for people washed up," and that has just not been the case on British television over the years. Almost a large proportion of the biggest stars on British TV come from reality shows, and Strictly has been the absolute making. I mean, the wonderful late Caroline Flack absolutely went from minor TV presenter to presenting The X Factor and Love Island because she won Strictly. AJ Adudu, who had been doing a few bits and bobs on television, went on Strictly. Yeah. Everyone saw her and loved her, and now she'll present everything in the world. If you have a client who is on the cusp of becoming huge and they have a personality that people like watching on television, then doing something like Strictly, almost impossible to think of a better show.
It's the biggest show on TV
for people to do exactly that, and
it's the biggest show on TV.
And obviously, it can go wrong for you, but it's equally, if it goes right, it goes really, really, really right. And usually, it's women who do better out of Strictly. But this year, I think there's two guys who capture
the public's imagination in that.
Yes.
How do you capture the public's imagination, Richard?
So capturing the imagination is an interesting question, because what you really want to do is capture a series of tick boxes for a commissioner, right? So it would have been, well, who can present this big new show? And you have to have a series of tick boxes. And so if you were AJ Adudu before Strictly, it would have been, well, I've seen you on House of Games, I've seen you on Big Brother's Little Brother, I see what it is that you do. People seem to like you, but do people know you?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You're sort of too unknown, and then you do Strictly, and you do very well on Strictly, and that final tick box is there, which is, people know you now as well. So a commissioner knows already that this person can present a big primetime show, but will the public accept it? Because do they know you? And you get that little tick, and suddenly, you are accepted, and you can do it. Same with Caroline as well, and. So here's the thing. Here's how you become famous, and this year's Strictly, I think, is a very interesting version of it. So take the Go Compare man, Wyn Evans, right? Now, can you be a big star? Can you be booked for a big show if you have a regional Welsh radio show? No, you cannot. That's what Wyn has, right? Can you be a big star if you're an opera singer? No. Well, that's what Wyn has. Can you be a big star if you're on the Go Compare adverts? No, you can't. Well, that's what Wyn has. So he's got all three of those things. So he's got a Welsh show, he is the Go Compare man, and he's an opera singer. So he has a real skill, a real talent. Then he goes on Celebrity MasterChef, because actually Celebrity MasterChef with those three things, you think, oh, actually that's someone, you stick him in the mix. Yeah. You go on Celebrity MasterChef, and you think, oh, this guy's actually got a personality. That's interesting.
He's got charm.
He's got charm, and he's more than you think he's going to be if you just heard the CV. So you go, okay, let's put him on Celebrity MasterChef. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. He's one of 16 on that, and that's fine. And he goes on there and he wins that, and so you kind of go, oh, okay, that's interesting. So he's done that show. So people have seen him on that. So that's another. He's an opera singer. He's got this radio show. He's a Go Compare man, and he won Celebrity MasterChef as well. Mate, I don't know about Strictly. Well, let's get him in. Let's get him in and talk to him about Strictly at the very, very least. And this is where bookers come in, is someone like Wyn Evans will come into that, and they'll put him through his dancing paces and go, oh, he dances better than you would think. So that's interesting. And also they'll chat to him and they'll just go, oh, I think people will like this guy. Yeah. I think people are going to find this guy interesting. So if I put together all the things he's got, is he famous enough to be on Strictly? He's probably just under the threshold. I meet him and you go, oh, people are going to love him. Let's book him on this. You stick him on Strictly and he's brilliant, which is what the bookers knew all along. So he just about justifies being on Strictly, even though all the people are going, I've never heard of him. He's the guy from the Go Compare ads. You go, no, listen, it
doesn't matter. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Also, he's got an awful lot of other skills, which the bookers know, and they really, really like him. So Wyn Evans, I think if you're watching that show, I think it might be the funniest Strictly ever, by the way, this series, because he is genuinely a very, very funny man. So he, I think, is going to go a long way in the competitions. He's a better dancer than you think. He's very, very funny. And he will then be able to write whatever check he wants. He'll be able to present, show he will be on everything and anything. You can book him on anything. And if you do The Wheel, if you do House of Games, anything, you go, oh, no, yeah, he was on Strictly, so you can have him now. But people will give him shows. And it's just, I think he's a very interesting test case of how you build up to become famous, and he just block by block, Lego brick by Lego brick. He just built enough to do this, which built enough to do that, and built enough to do that. But every single step of the way, people liked him. And that's the absolute key.
Yeah, part of it on that show, I do think your personality, it's a bit like almost being in an ensemble cast in a comedy or a drama. Your personality must be easily understood.
Yes.
In reality television in general, even if it's like I'm mean or I'm, it's easy. And he is so charming. He's so nice. And he's very funny. Yeah. But it's easy to understand where he fits in. And there's a sort of readability that really helps, I think.
Exactly that. And the beauty of Strictly as well is if you stay in long enough, which he will, you also get the other side of the journey, which is I am vulnerable and it is difficult being me sometimes. And, here's my family and this is who I actually am as a human being, by which point people have fallen in love with him already. And so, they are absolutely ready to accept all of that stuff. So I think he is going to be huge. The guy who's going to be super massive off the back of this show is Chris McCausland. And I first came across Chris on Would I Lie to You a few years ago. And Chris, listen, no secret, he's blind. Okay, which and representation on television has become incredibly important, and so it's always great to represent people. But the key thing about Chris is he's funnier than everybody else. Right, he's just brilliant, and he can do jokes about being blind. He can jokes about visual impairment, but he also just does jokes. He just does brilliant jokes, and every single time we've put him on a show, and he came on House of Games. He is just brilliant. You know, he is relatable. People like him. He's funny. He has a salt of the earth quality to him. He understands the format he's on. If he's on House of Games, he will be funny, but he will make everyone around him funnier as well, which is the real skill. But that's an incredible thing to be able to do. It's not that ego thing of I'm going to be the funniest person in the room. It's definitely have the capability to be the funniest person in the room, but I want everyone else to be enjoying themselves as well, and I want to have fun in people's company. And you see, as I say, I do think Strictly is the funniest ever because he and Wynn are genuinely very funny, and there's lots of supporting cast members there also who can keep up with them. But Chris is an example of somebody who, again, so he's a comedian. There is a route through for comedians to be on television programs because you can be booked on things, but lots of people get booked on something for the first time, and it's like, oh he was good or she was funny, but they don't get booked again. Every single time Chris has done something, before he gets in, he does the work. Absolutely does. So he's naturally very, very funny anyway, but he will do the work. He will turn up understanding the job you want him to do. The first time he's on Would I Lie to You, first couple of things he did were gags he'd clearly done before in his stand-up about visual impairment, which are brilliantly funny, as you would expect, because they're honed over the years. So you think, that's interesting. But then Lee will say something, and Chris will come back with something that completely extemporised. You think, oh, you got that as well. Have you got that in your locker? And then you just think, well, this guy has got everything because he's got a relatability, he's got a shtick, but also he's brilliantly funny off the cuff. And you see him on Strictly, and both dances he's done, I'm sitting there with Ingrid, we're both in tears. There's something about it. There's something about the fact he can't see and he's doing these dances and the bravery it takes. So before the thing he can do proper jokes, he does this thing which you just think, this is extraordinary, and then he's back to doing jokes again. And doing jokes in such a way that he makes the show stronger. So he will do jokes about Craig that make the format stronger, that make Strictly stronger. He absolutely understands that. So he looks good. He will do jokes about his fellow contestants that make the show stronger. And that's how you become a star, and that's how you become a deserved star. And 20 years ago, would a blind comedian have been booked for the first time and Would I Lie to You? Possibly not, I would say. And the fact that he was, and the fact that he immediately showed who he was, and the fact that he's had this incredible trajectory, all down to him, by the way, every single bit of it. A door was opened, and he has, my God, he has made every single mile of progress has been his progress. And it's so amazing to see. But it's an example of him and Wynn. As I say, it's usually women on these shows that really go from strength to strength. But this year, I think it's the two of them. And it comes from being incredibly good at what they do, being incredibly likable, and just turning up, putting the work in, and making the show the most important thing. Yeah. And so I think both of those two are a testament to the Booker's art as well, which, if you hadn't heard of them before, you've certainly heard of them now.
They've cast Anna Delvey. I can't remember what her real name is, but it's not that. The one from Inventing Anna, the scamming fake heiress.
Who just came out of prison.
She actually has an electronic tag, and actually she drew attention to it. I mean, I hate to talk like a Mail Online article, but she was flaunting it and didn't care who saw.
Right.
Anyhow, but she was voted off in week 1 in a double elimination with Tori Spelling. What she did do, I mean, obviously she's a terrible person. They had to, by the way, you're right, they had to negotiate because she's supposed to be under house arrest, waiting to be deported. So they had to negotiate with the immigration department. You can imagine if the BBC tried to do this. I know they want our television. People who hate the BBC want our television to be more like America. Well, here you are. This is what happens. Anyhow, she was voted off. But obviously she's a terrible person, but they did say to her at the end, and what do you take from this experience? And she just said, nothing. Now, I know, I mean, I always reflexively slightly love people who say the wrong thing in any given situation. And the fact that it wasn't a journey for her and it wasn't any of that, I did find quite funny. Although normally, of course, she does take things. She likes to have a few things in her bag, just $100,000 or if it's not nailed down, she will take it.
But that's the interesting thing. That's what if you want famous people, then she was famous because she went to prison. But that's not how you book a reality. That's not how you book Strictly. You book Strictly. You meet people, go, are people going to fall in love with this person? And they do. You don't have a convicted felon because it sounds good. And again, she comes out and just goes, I was edited badly, which is the last recourse of every scoundrel who's ever been on these shows. People didn't really really see the real me. They didn't see the great stuff I was doing. They gave me the wrong dances. They gave me the wrong partner. They didn't. People just don't like you.
I've paid my debt to society, I believe, was in that mix.
Wow.
I've served my time. Sorry.
There's been
a
lot of that on this on this episode, hasn't there?
Yeah, and people who haven't quite still have some to clear of that debt, I believe.
Yeah, exactly that. So anyway, I think that this year Strictly is going to be a cracker, and I think it's good that they avoid the Anna Delveys of this world.
Yes. All right. On that note, please join us again on Thursday for the questions and answers edition.
Look forward to it so much. We covered a lot of ground, didn't we, today?
We certainly did.
Yeah, a lot going on.
Yeah, a lot going on. And I'm sure there will be on Thursday. So do join us. The address for questions is therestisentertainment@gmail.com.
We'll see you on Thursday.
See you on Thursday.